How's it going, guys? My name is Tavarish, and today we are still working on my cheap Lamborghini's turbo kit. But instead of me showing you how all these pipes go together and how they're fabricated, I'm going to tell you how much everything costs. So if you guys are new to my channel, thank you so much for showing up. Hope you guys like it and subscribe if you like what you see. For those of you not new to my channel and you've been following along in my antics, then you'll know that this is my 2008 Lamborghini Gallardo Spider, and it is very, very close to its first startup with a brand new custom-made turbo kit. That turbo kit was a labor of love, not only by me, well actually not really by me, I didn't do much, but it had more to do with my friend and viewer and just all around great guy. His name is Tony. And he's here to work on the baller pipe, what I call a baller pipe, because it looks so baller. But Tony actually said it looks like bull horns. And that makes a lot of sense because this is a bull after all. So I wanted to let you guys know how much everything cost, including the turbos, including everything. So let's say if you bought a bone stock Lamborghini and you wanted to put a turbo kit on your own and you had a few welding skills. Well, if you're Tony, you have way more than a few welding skills. But if you have a decent amount of welding skills and you'll be able to put this together, how much does all that cost? Now, before I answer that, I actually wanted to talk to you about a few questions I got about this turbo kit. Now, if we go right here and we check this out, this is the turbo kit. This is just the hot sides of the turbo so we can mock everything up, and the exhaust is being welded as we speak. But a few of you had some concerns about how everything was mounted. And some of you were right and some of you were wrong, and I'll tell you that we were all both half right and half wrong. So this is a one of the up pipes, or rather down pipes, and this is the other one. And this turbo system is going to be hard mounted to the body of the car. Now, usually in most cars, the turbo system has to be mounted to the engine or transmission or wherever, because the mounting is very important. You don't want to introduce any vibrations into this system. And when you connect it to a hard mounted piece like the body, then you might introduce vibrations because this pipe is connected to the engine and the engine definitely moves around. However, these pipes, as you can see, this pipe has a flex section, as does this pipe. This means that this can stay solid and that can move. The issue that I'm having now is something I just figured out this morning, is the fact that I mounted this, one side is mounted to the transmission, which does move, and one side is mounted to the body, which doesn't. So what this is gonna do is that's gonna introduce it's gonna introduce a failure point, because this is gonna move, or it's gonna wanna move, this is gonna get restricted, and I think this is gonna be our culprit for any cracking of welding or anything. But what I don't want to happen is this transmission is actually made of aluminum, and that aluminum casing can crack if indeed these welds are more strong than the aluminum surrounding. So what I have to do is I have to figure out how to brace everything and still have all this rigidity, because it is very, very rigid. I want to have all this rigidity and not have this mount or this mount. You can actually see it a little better here. So this is basically a no-no. I just figured it out, and for some reason I thought that this was hard mounted, but it's not. There's actually a rubber mounting right here, and this allows the transmission to move, and there's gonna be a lot of torque going through this transmission. So that's something we have to take care of. So before we get down to all the numbers and figures that go into a kit like this, I want to show you some of the welding awesomeness that goes on in this garage. That's actually going on in this garage as we speak. So let's check that out. Now let's get down to the actual numbers of how much it costs to turbocharge a Lamborghini. Now there are a lot of kits off the shelf that you can buy for a Gallardo, a Huracan, and even I believe an Audi R8, which is a very similar platform to this. However, those kits are extremely expensive. They're anywhere between $25,000 and $100,000 depending on if you do some engine modification as well. Now, if you want just a bare bones kit, if you want something that'll just get you in the door to having a turbocharged Lamborghini, here's what you're gonna need. One of these, or rather two of these. These are the turbochargers, and that's what provides the boost in your turbocharged system. Now, I got BorgWarner EFR 8374s, and they're a little bit special because they're not like usual turbocharging systems where everything is external, meaning that the wastegate and the blow-off valve is all external and you have to buy those items separately. This has everything internally, and it's all one really easily packaged unit. However, that means that these turbochargers are quite expensive on their own. This one cost me, well, the new one I bought cost me around $1,600, and that was the cheapest one I can find online, and the cheapest one I found locally as well. They usually go for around $2,200 to $2,500 a piece. So right out of the gate, if you need to buy two of these things at their retail price, you're looking at around $5,000. So on top of that, you're actually gonna need the piping. And the piping is something that is actually not that hard to do if you're doing it yourself. Now, those of you who have a little bit of welding skills, a little bit of welding knowledge, will understand that a pipe is a pipe and a weld is a weld. If you look at the basic layout of any twin turbo kit for a Lamborghini, they all look sort of similar. They all have the turbos in the back, and they all have some sort of crossover pipe. If not, they just have pipes coming out the side right out of the exhaust. It's sort of a remote mount turbo system, and it makes stuff pretty easy, and you can make it bolt on directly to the engine, bolt on directly to the chassis, and everything is pretty good. Now, you can replicate that, and I have replicated that here. Now, in my project, I didn't do the welding. I actually had a friend, a viewer, come by and help me with that, and I'm very grateful for him. But if you don't have one of these welding buddies that can help you out, then you're gonna need to either learn to weld or you're gonna hire a welder. So welders worth their salt are worth, well, more than their salt. You could actually buy a lot of salt with how much welders are charging. But you're gonna be looking at between $25 and $100 an hour for the top end welders. And they can make everything fit. They can make everything look really good, but again, it's gonna take a lot of time and it's gonna take a little bit of money, or vice versa. So the time aspect is really interesting as well, because even though you can get everything done custom if you have a welder or if you have some welding knowledge, and it's not actually that much money in piping per se, I will get into that later, but the time it takes to make these pipes and make everything fit and make sure it doesn't hit anything and make sure it's not in danger of burning anything, because these are going to be really hot exhaust pipes, and you have to figure for thermal expansion because they're going to move around a little bit. After you've done all that, that takes a very long time. Now, a few of you have been complaining about how long everything takes, especially mocking up this turbo kit. And let me show you why that is. Now, when you make a turbo kit, you have to have a pipe, okay? So you have a pipe, it's just a regular 3-inch stainless steel, let's say, and it has a specific curve to it. However, that curve is not the correct curve for your car, so you have to cut that curve. Now, after you cut that curve, you can't just slap it onto your car and eyeball everything. Well, I mean, you can, but it's not gonna last very long. You have to make sure that it's completely flat. You have to make sure that it's not ovaled. You have to make sure that it's not impure in any way. You have to clean up that cut with a wire wheel. You have to clean it up with a file, and then you have to offer it up to the car. At that point, you can see if it needs any other curves to make a compound curve like we've done here, and then you tack it in place. Sometimes you have to tack it up in place in the car, and for that you have to make a jig that keeps everything in its relative space. I did that with the wood planks that you guys might have seen earlier, but that's very necessary, because that lets me know where everything's going to be sitting when everything's all finalized and welded up. Now, after that, you have to make sure that you back purge the welds, especially on stainless steel. If you don't back purge the welds, then the welds become brittle on the inside and they start to do something called sugaring, which is it's just impurities in the weld. And if it's bad enough, then chunks of that could come off and go into your turbocharger, which you probably just paid $2,000 for, so you don't want to break that. So after you've tacked everything in place and you checked 3 or 4 times that everything fits, then you have to take it all off and then have it welded. Then weld everything up and make sure that you don't burn through anything, make sure that you're not sugaring, and then also make sure that you're not putting too much heat into it because metal will warp. When you weld a surface that's hot enough, when it cools down, it starts to pull the surrounding metal in, it contracts. So if you have something like a V-band clamp or you have something like a flange, sometimes that metal can warp if it's too thin. So you have to look out for this. And then you always have to bring it back to the car, see if it fits. Sometimes things move around, things change, and sometimes you do make mistakes with how you routed things. I definitely made a mistake with these brackets. I definitely have to take off some brackets and figure something out. But that's why it takes so incredibly long. So let me get to the pipes. The pipes themselves actually aren't that expensive. I got a full kit with 180-degree bends, I got 90-degree bends, 45s, and 2 straight sections. And I got 2 kits just to make sure that I had all the bends we needed. So each kit was around $150. So figure $300 for the entire kit. And I actually have a lot left over. I mean, I have 4 of these pipes. And yeah, I could definitely make an exhaust for any other car that I get. So it's always good to have some stainless steel pipe laying around. You can go mild steel. Mild steel is a lot more affordable. The only reason I didn't get mild steel is because mild steel has very bad rust preventative properties. It doesn't prevent rust at all. Basically, if you get any sort of water on it, it's just going to rust out. And since exhaust has moisture in it inherently, then it's not a good thing. It's just going to rust from the inside. So stainless steel does not rust, and it also looks pretty nice. And it also, some people say it sounds a little bit better, but I'm not sure. You need aluminum for the intercooler piping. So the intercooler piping, that was around $100. Just got it off eBay. Just got a 2.5 and a 3-inch kit. So that comes with the intercooler piping. It comes with the silicone couplers and the T-bolt clamps. So that's all very, very affordable. In actual raw materials, you're looking at probably less than $500. That includes the flanges here. You're going to need some new turbo flanges. So make sure you know what turbo you got. I have a T4 turbo flange. And make sure that, well, you can actually reuse the flanges that are stock on the car. You might need to get new bungs for the O2 sensors if you have a thermocouple. For cars like this, they have a thermocouple. Basically, it's a EGT, exhaust gas temperature sensor. So this car definitely has one. I think it might even have 2. So get bungs for that, and then just drill that into your new exhaust, and you have to weld that up. Everything is definitely doable on a DIY budget if you save up a little bit of money and you know where to get stuff. However, there is another portion of this build where you do need to spend a little bit of money, and that is with everything's heavy. That's with this. This is a air to water intercooler. So what these systems do is it basically cools the charge air coming from the turbocharger. Now, when the turbo spools up, you're compressing the air and you're heating it up inherently. So what this does is it either runs through a sort of radiator and it slows it down a little bit, and it makes it a lot more dense, so that gives you more power. So mine does it through water. And it's just like a radiator, it just goes through a membrane that has a lot of little fins, and then it goes, and that membrane is filled with water, and that water is cycled, so the water takes the heat and then exchanges it for cooler temperatures. Now, then it goes into the engine, and then the engine makes plenty of power. At least that's the idea. So for me, I needed a tank for storing water, I needed lines, I needed a pump. So figure all that. The tank, I actually use I don't even know where it is. Here it is. This is a junior dragster tank. It's actually a fuel cell, but it's good enough for water. Anything that's rated for fuel can handle water usually. So this is a 1 gallon, and I'm not sure if this is going to be big enough. I took out a 5 gallon that was in here when I got the car, but that took up the entire space in the front, and that's the only storage in the car. So yeah, I'm not down with doing a road trip with no storage in the car. This actually fits in the engine bay, and I'm just going to run lines from there to a pump, then to my air-to-water intercooler. Now that costs around 80 bucks shipped. So a good intercooler pump on the used market would probably be around 100 to 150 bucks, depending on where you find it. Bosch makes really good pumps. So one of those is 150, and then you have to run the lines, which usually are AN lines, and those are regular AN fittings. They tend to be on the larger side, maybe AN-8 or -10, and that goes into the intercooler. So all that's probably going to be another 100, 150 bucks. So you're all into this around 500 bucks, but that's not including the intercooler itself. And my intercooler, it's actually 2 intercoolers welded together. So this can theoretically flow 1,500 horsepower. I'm not sure how true that is, but there are smaller intercoolers, there are more compact ones. Those are actually pretty cheap. You can get the cores relatively cheap. They're about 100 bucks each, but that's the lower end of the spectrum. You can go crazy with it, and you do have to make it fit your application. Mine was custom made, so I have no idea how much that cost, but figure aluminum welding with the time and materials and all that stuff, it's probably more than $1,000. So this is turning out to be pretty expensive actually. Now let's say you get everything situated. You have all the lines ran, you have the downpipes right in place, you have the turbos set up, you have your oil feed lines and your coolant lines, and all that stuff ready to go. Then you're gonna have to do some tuning to the engine. The engine, unless it's a turbocharged car from the factory and you're just adding to it, the engine's probably not gonna recognize that you have a turbocharger system on your car, and it's not gonna react very well. Now this engine is actually quite good at recognizing if it has more power, and you can actually tune it pretty easily, but even a flash tune from a company like Titan or Eurocharge or some other company that deals with ECUs, that would likely cost you $1,000 to $2,000. You can get a standalone ECU and you can do your own tuning, but those standalones are incredibly expensive for cars like this. I actually have a standalone ECU on this car. It's a Syvex S12. Syvex is a UK company, and they make really good ECUs, and they have a lot of different features. But this ECU, you'll pay for all those features because this is $10,000 or thereabouts. So if you want to go the DIY route, it's actually a lot cheaper just to go with your own ECU and then have it reflashed. Just let them know what sort of mods you have, and they should be able to take care of it for you. There are a few kits that use the stock ECU, especially for this car. I think it's the same thing for the Huracan and the Audi R8. But another thing to look out for is the fuel system. So the fuel system is definitely something that has to be upgraded when you do a turbo system or a supercharger system, or you're adding power to anything. You have to make sure that when you add air, you have to add fuel as well. So with this car, it actually has 2 upgraded fuel pumps. It has a TI Automotive, which is equivalent to a Walbro 450 GPH, gallon per hour fuel pump. It has 2 of them because there are 2 fuel tanks in this car. Now, this car did have pretty good fuel pumps to begin with. I think they can flow up to around 850 wheel horsepower or thereabouts, whatever that translates to in turbo speak and air volume and whatever. But these outperform that by an order of magnitude, and they're actually not that expensive. They're about 100 bucks a piece, and you can find them anywhere. Now, a lot of people go with the Walbro 255 LPH, which is 255 liters per hour, and that's really popular with a lot of people in the Honda communities and the Subaru communities, and a lot of communities where you have low boost, but with this, you definitely need something bigger. Now, fuel pumps aren't that expensive. They're pretty easy to replace. Here, you do have to take out the engine if you want to take out the fuel tank like I did, but you don't have to take out the fuel tank to take out the fuel pumps, because you can actually get to them behind the seats. It's a little bit finicky. It's really tight, but you can do it. So it's not really that hard. It should be, you can do it in a weekend. And after all that is done, you still have to get the car tuned. So tuning the car is another can of worms altogether, because everything you do, if it's not done correctly and if you don't have everything completely on point, your engine could blow if you don't have a really good tuner who knows what they're doing. So tuning can cost a pretty penny. I mean, you can easily rack up thousands of dollars of tuning cost, because you have to tune for all situations. You can't just do one tune for power, because you're not going to be driving this thing at 10 tenths all the time. Well, I mean, you could. So they have to tune for part throttle, part boost. They have to tune for no boost. They have to tune for every single situation. And even though ECUs are getting really good at this, they still need that extra human touch to make sure that the car is reacting very well. And they have to monitor the AFRs, the air-fuel ratios, and they have to monitor that nothing is, well, on fire back here. But before you get to the tuning, you also have to monitor the drivetrain. And the drivetrain on this car, it's actually really simple. There's just two drive shafts here. There's one drive shaft that goes up front to the front differential, and then there's two drive shafts that go out from there. But when you show these drive shafts a lot of power, they don't actually stay together all that well, especially if you're doing something like a drag launch. So you're gonna maybe wanna upgrade your drive shafts, but you're definitely gonna wanna upgrade your clutch. And the clutch in this car is pretty expensive. It's ridiculously expensive. So an upgraded clutch for this costs between $5,000 and $10,000. It's just for the clutch. It's not including installation or anything like that. So I got lucky, and my clutch is actually in good working condition. Hopefully everything stays together. But I have a spec Super Twin clutch in this, and this should be able to hold the power just fine. The stock clutch cannot hold the power of a twin turbo kit. So it's a good thing that I have a lot of these components on my car, because otherwise I really wouldn't be able to afford it. It's literally tens of thousands of dollars just in materials. So if you're thinking about buying a cheap Gallardo or an R8 or a Huracan, then know that if you want to go the DIY route, it's definitely doable, but it costs a lot of money. It's going to cost a lot of money just in, it's going to nickel and dime you, because, you know, $500 here, $1,000 there, that's going to add up really quickly, and you're going to wonder why you didn't go with a regular kit beforehand. Now, I'm not going to wonder why, because I got everything here basically with the car. So that's the saving grace for this car. However, if you guys are doing it on your own, you want to tackle something like this in your garage, then that's something you definitely need to account for. And doing a DIY turbo kit on an exotic car is a hard thing to do. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I'm not going to say that it's easy or that it's particularly fun, but you can do it if you have the determination, you have the raw materials, and you have a good internet savvy where you can get a turbo, or you can get some piping, or you can get some of those really crucial components for next to nothing. And just like parts costs can accumulate quickly, the savings can accumulate quickly as well. So if you find a turbo that's used but still in good condition, then you can get 50% off or somewhere thereabouts. If you have piping that somebody doesn't need, you can get way less than what the retail cost is. Then if you have a intercooler, or if you have an ECU, or if you have injectors or fuel pumps, all that stuff comes at an extreme discount if you find it used. But if we're going strictly by the prices that we've laid out in this video, then you're looking at anywhere between $10,000 and $20,000 to turbocharge one of these. That's not actually that bad, considering that the lowest end kit is around $25,000. So you can get a $15,000 decrease by doing everything yourself and have just as good a kit, if not better, because now it's built to your specifications. Now, there's a lot of caveats here. It's going to take a lot of sleepless nights. You're going to have a lot of downtime with your car. Things aren't going to be under warranty. Some of these shops do have warranties, so that's something to consider. But for me, yeah. So I hope you guys like that. I hope you guys learned something. I certainly learned that it's actually a little more than I thought. I thought this was going to be a really simple DIY project, and it's not going to cost a lot of money, but me putting the numbers in my head and recounting them for you, that actually, it's a little more than I thought. So if you want to do something like this, save your pennies. But Stay tuned for the finale of this build. Well, it's going to be coming up. I still have to do some more stuff. Tony's been welding, I've been wrenching, and we're definitely going to get this thing done, and we're going to get it started, and it's going to sound awesome. So if you'd like to contact me, you can do so at The Real Tavarish. That is Instagram and Twitter. Facebook.com/AskTavarish and AskTavarish@gmail.com is my email. You guys are sending me a lot of emails on this car and this turbo kit and all this stuff, and I enjoy every second of it, so keep it coming. If you want to listen to me talk to a friend, a really good friend, and my partner in crime, Mr. Andrew Howell, then you can listen to my Wrench Everyday podcast. That's my everyday podcast about cars, and that's going to be in the link in the description below. If you want to buy a shirt, Teespring link down below. But until next time, this is me telling you that on cars like this that don't have turbo kits right now because they're getting welded up, but they're actually less money than you think, but more money than I think, you guys need to wrench every day.